Hegseth, oh beautiful Hegseth, oh big blue-eyed beautiful Hegseth. He apparently, as the other signal chat crises was going on, as this other scandal was going on, hey, this Atlantic journalist got added to a signal chat, this not government secured platform of this private entity, this private communication platform, where they're discussing classified mission details, like flight times, the type of aircrafts that will be used, what time can be expected for them to attack, the different waves of attack, a bunch of stuff that, while they said at first was not classified, ended up very clearly being classified. Because you cannot have weapons information, aircraft information, and flight patterns, flight data, times. None of this would be publicly posted or talked about by a defense secretary before a landing. You don't say, hey, we're going to land at D-Day at this time openly, because that would kind of foil the whole operation. If the Houthis knew when we were going to be arriving and hitting them, then they would have time to take their assets and move them into more secure locations. They would be able to say, hey, we were going to do a rocket attack at that time, but we don't want to get hurt, so we're going to try to protect our assets. We're going to try to protect our rockets. We're going to try to protect our personnel. Or even worse, they could take their air defense munitions and get them into position. And so a Air Force that was coming, aircraft that was coming, pilots, American lives that was coming to Yemen under the idea that they had operational secrecy, was going to find themselves being waited for on the shorelines and being fired upon. Now, I think the Houthis, it might not matter as much, because I don't think their intelligence, tentacles go that far, and they don't have the strongest air defense capabilities. They still have air defense capabilities, but not the strongest. But that doesn't mean the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians couldn't provide them with the intelligence if they were able to intercept it due to being on unsecured channels. And this also doesn't mean that the Chinese, that the Russians, that the Iranians, that certain terrorist organizations, that anybody or any party that has adversarial interest in the United States could not find this out and then think, oh my goodness, we know how to get flight pattern information from the White House. We know how to get information on weapons use, aircraft use, when it's going to happen. We know how to get, maybe not even that, but other pieces of information not yet leaked, if we can just intercept their diplomatic personnel as they're traveling through their country and are using signal, or if they're using these unsecured platforms and we can get somebody in these rooms like that Atlantic journalist, or if we can do X, Y, and Z. And so this was a scandal. It was treated as such, as the Trump administration beat it off. And the person who was probably most scarred by it was Michael Waltz, the president's national security advisor, because he was the one who butt-dialed the person into the room, the Atlantic journalist. Now, after the scandal had largely passed, that's not to say that it didn't still have national security implications. That's not to say that it still didn't matter. That is to say that the country had began to move on, because there was much else at stake and much else to talk about. We then get hit with a second signal chat, finding out that Pete Hegseth, Donald Trump's defense secretary, with no public government experience, who has never managed an organization of more than 300 people, now managing an organization of hundreds of thousands, an organization with an $850 billion military budget. $850 billion budget. This guy took this flight information about these strikes, about striking in Yemen, and put it in a separate signal chat off of his personal phone, not a secured government device, his personal cell phone. He put it into a second signal chat that was created in order to strategize about getting him chosen and voted upon and confirmed by the Senate. So it was around his confirmation process. And in this chat, there was his brother, his lawyer, and even his wife. Now, these messages had nothing to do with this confirmation process. This confirmation process was long over. It was done. These messages had to do with times for strikes. Why would Pete Hegseth's lawyer, his brother, or his wife be on a need to know basis on classified information, putting aside even thinking about the fact that it was on an unsecure platform with an unsecured device. But why would any of these people be on a need to know basis? They're not. I mean, at least his brother like works in like the national defense broadly, but his lawyer, his wife, why would his wife need to know strike times? She has no reason to know strike times. In fact, he is actively probably getting his wife in more trouble than it's worth by giving her that type of information, because she's out on the town. I'm not trying to say she's silly or stupid, but you start pumping that type of classified information to someone, especially if they don't know how valuable it is, and they start gabbing and gawing about it at the hairdresser or at the store or to the mailman or to somebody that is actively trying to find leaks like this because it's their job, because they're spies, tries to take advantage of it. That's how spies get leaks and use it to compromise our nation's national security. None of these people were on a need to know basis. This was on an unsecured platform, on an unsecured device, his personal device. And people could say, like, you know what? We don't know the Chinese found out. And fine, maybe the Chinese or this or that or whoever might not have found out in this specific instance. But what about future instances? What about other signal chats or other small security failures that can build up and accumulate? Because it's not just the one thing, it's all these things together. It's the unsecured phone on top of the unsecured platform, on top of the people who didn't have clearance, who were never confirmed to see this information, who don't have classification clearance to see this. And it's happening again. Now, this is already scandalous. And Pete Hegseth's response to it, I think, had much to be desired. And we're going to go into it in a moment. But first, this wasn't it. We also got the firings and resignations of a bunch of people in Pete Hegseth's staff, including Dan Caldwell, Colin Carroll, Darren Selnick, and one of the Pentagon's top spokespeople, who wrote an op-ed in Politico as to why he resigned, describing the situation for the last month. Even, he said, and the way he described it wasn't like, oh, it's just this. He said that even backers of the secretary, not of the president, because in this article where he goes into detail, you can see the article here. He constantly talks about the need to support the president, the need to support Donald Trump's agenda, the need to, address this country's national security concerns. And he's saying that Pete Hegseth is a distraction from that. And that for those, and these are from his close personal confidants, these are people that Pete Hegseth brought in to replace the other people. I heard from Donald Trump trying to respond to this saying, oh, well, you're getting rid of the old guard, you're getting rid of all these bad, corrupt people. No, these are his people. These are Pete Hegseth's closest confidants in the Defense Department. And they're saying, and I quote, that even backers of the secretary, not the president, of Hegseth, even the backers of the secretary have to admit that the last month has been full-blown meltdown and chaos at the Pentagon. And the people who are those walking away, including this individual here, they're saying stuff like, and I quote, he's unlikely to remain in his role. Unlikely to remain of his role due to the high amount of dysfunction, backstabbing, and continuous missteps at the highest level of the department. This building is in disarray under Hegseth's leadership, John Hewlett wrote in Sunday, the Political Magazine's opinion piece. This dysfunction is now a major distraction for the president, who deserves better from his senior leadership. My goodness. So we have two signal scandals, one from Donald Trump's national security advisor, another from his defense secretary, one because they butt-dialed journalists into a classified hearing, a classified room on Signal, where it shouldn't even been happening in the first place, another because we find out that Pete Hegseth on his personal device needed to inform his wife and his lawyer and his brother about strike times in Yemen on a group chat that wasn't even about national security. It was about his confirmation hearing, which he had already long succeeded in clearing. Shouldn't have probably succeeded in clearing, but have long succeeded in clearing. So this is now being compounded by all these people jumping ship and saying that it's dysfunctional at the Pentagon. And we're seeing people getting fired, including 40 staffers, for things like countering Russian, Chinese, Iranian, and terrorist disinformation. We're seeing other people get cut and then brought back and then cut again, not all across the government, but also within the Pentagon. And this guy who's talking about war fighting 24/7, this guy who's talking about the need to make us more lethal and more effective, is cutting the areas of innovation for the Pentagon. Those in the tech sphere who want to, give fast tech-based solutions to the Pentagon, cutting those who are trying to misinform our public and manipulate our society against itself through the use of disinformation. Not only the Russians, but other nation states as well as terrorist organizations. And he's been using a lot of his time in this position to pursue culture war. I mean, for all of the time he's spent trying to, okay, how can we cut these trans people out of the armed forces? Maybe he could have spent that time trying to streamline the NCO Corps, trying to make it more effective, trying to make that more lean. Maybe instead of trying to cut the amount of lawyers who are working at the Pentagon around, legal war theory and making sure that we're abiding by the laws of war, maybe we get more so we can have people on a need-to-know basis need to know. I mean, there's a bunch of things he could be concentrating on, and he doesn't need to agree with anything that I think's a priority. Hell, recruitment could use a million times more attention at any day of the week in comparison to, again, trying to find more ways to disqualify other people from joining the armed forces during a recruitment crisis. Not because we've decided trans people cannot work as engineers, but because they make us uncomfortable serving in any capacity. And when I say we mean you. So I think that the culture war angle, his lack of experience in public office, his lack of experience leading large organizations or large budgets, and I just think the fact that, he hasn't shown the ability to lead outside of the fact that, yeah, he talks a lot about war fighting, and yeah, he did hold a rifle. There's a lot of people who can talk a lot about war fighting and hold a rifle. That doesn't mean they can lead an organization of 850 billion people. And so there's being more and more questions about, is Hegseth going to go? And the people who are jumping ship saying that it's a matter of time, not only because of these scandals, but because more scandals are coming. And this guy is so dysfunctional that trying to cover this up for 4 years is just more trouble than it's worth. Now, Ken, you have to balance that against, well, they just confirmed the guy and going through a whole other confirmation process. It's going to be a whole new sleuth of political capital. But Pete Hegseth has hearings. In 2 weeks, Pete Hegseth has to go before the Senate Armed Services Committee to have a hearing about our military posture. In 2 weeks. And in that hearing, he's going to be asked questions not only by people in his own party who might be more willing to avoid tough questions in order to cover for the administration that they have based their political fortunes on, but also Democrats, also those who are going to be more adversarial. And even, I don't even know if all the Republicans are going to just take this lying down. And so in those hearings, when he's getting gone at by both sides, or he has to talk to the press and different media scrums between events, Hegseth's going to be put under pressure, and that is going to be clipped, and it is going to be shipped. And is that worth it if Pete Hegseth doesn't even have the skills necessary in order to deliver upon Trump's agenda, or to, even though sometimes maybe it shouldn't be delivered upon, but to make the military more lethal or more war fighting? Isn't there a bunch of other people who could have his position who are probably as loyal, cultishly loyal to the president? Well, Pete Hegseth's not going to go down easy. And while there is public pressure from things like the Democratic Party to make him resign, for example, Pete Hegseth needs to go. This is an example of a post that the Democratic Party made within the last 24 hours as this all broke. This is how Pete Hegseth decided to respond. His social media staffers, of course. Your agenda is illegals, trans, and DEI, all of which are no longer allowed at the DoD. This is his defense. And this is going to be a trend. If you look at any of his defense, it's not, I didn't share classified information, or my wife is on a need-to-know basis. It's all, what about, or this is old news. But it's a new perspective on an old story, but it's still a new perspective. Now, the Democrats responded by making fun of his alcoholism. And they said Pete's POV, and then posted a blurry screenshot of a phone to implicate or indicate that Pete is drunk while looking at his phone and tweeting and messaging out, and that he's a drunkard, because that's the reputation that he has built. Now, let's listen to Pete Hegseth at the Easter egg hunt, flanked by, his supporters. I think those are Doge staffers behind him, who looked horrified at this. Let's listen to Pete Hegseth respond.
This is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
Sorry, I thought those were Doge staffers. Those might just be children. Well, actually, that doesn't disqualify them from being Doge staffers, but still. This is not a response. We have 4 separate staffers. 4 separate staffers coming forward. I mean, one was the spokesperson for the Pentagon. So you choose somebody, hey, you're a spokesperson for us. And then they speak, and you're like, no. Disgraced former staff. You chose them to speak for you. They speak, and they say, this is bad. It's a mess here. This person needs to be removed. And all of a sudden, it's just disgraced and disgruntled former staffers. What benefit do these people have from jumping ship like this? What benefit do they have? The gravy train of Trump 2.0 just started. Why would they jump ship now if there wasn't some reason to do so? Just disgruntled former staffers. I mean, let's read about how these people got fired. Dan Caldwell, Colin Carroll, and Darren Selnick. We are incredibly disappointed by the manner in which our service to the Department of Defense ended. Unnamed Pentagon officials have slandered our character with baseless attacks on our way out the door. All 3 of us served our country honorably in uniform. For 2 of us, this included deployments to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And based on our collective service, we understand the importance of information security and worked every day to protect it. At this time, we still have not been told what exactly we are investigated for, if there is still an active investigation, or if there was even a real investigation of leaks to begin with. While this experience has been unconscionable, we remain supportive of the Trump-Vance administration mission. Sad. To make the Pentagon great again and achieve peace through strength. We hope in the future to support those efforts in different capacities. So they got purged for leaks. And the Pentagon spokesperson publishes an op-ed about how much of a mess it is over at the Pentagon. And Pete Hegseth's pitch is, well, the reason that they're saying it's a mess is because they're disgruntled. They're disgruntled former staffers. But we still have the stories leaking out to prove that these are your mistakes. The Defense Secretary should know that his wife should not be on a need-to-know basis about strike times for airstrikes that endanger U.S. personnel. What is so important about his wife knowing when U.S. airmen are going to be in harm's way, the times of that we need to put our servicemen and women in risk for that reason? Again, off his personal device, unsecured platform, commercial platform. We have billions of dollars of infrastructure invested into having secured mechanisms to talk to his wife, unvetted, uncleared, no access. And this is just what we found out so far. Again, this is what has made its way to the public. If he's willing to be this chitter-chattery with his wife, do you think it ends there? All good questions. At least I think so. But apparently Trump didn't think so.
President Trump, do you remain confident in Hegseth? Do you remain confident in Pete Hegseth?
The question is, do you remain confident in Pete Hegseth?
Hegseth?
President Trump, I'm sorry.
Why do you even ask a question like that? We have recruitments that's at an all-time high. The spirit in the armed forces is fantastic. Great confidence.
President Trump,
So Pete Hegseth has another leaked story, has his staff falling like flies, and Trump's response to, like, do you still have confidence in this person, as reports are coming out that people are considering, giving them the boot. And he questions the media's right to even ask, like, why are you asking me a question about Pete Hegseth? Well, here's Trump explaining in a longer fashion to C-SPAN, blessed be C-SPAN, explaining exactly why this doesn't matter anymore. Because, come on, it's old news, guys. We're talking about Signal again. Isn't that an old story? Come on. By the way, Watergate wasn't like a week. Watergate continued to extend because more and more information came out that made the story more and more damning. And this makes the story more damning because it's not just one Signal chat. Now there's 2 Signal chats, and who knows how many more Signal chats there might be. And now that we know that it's classified, after they say it wasn't classified, we're now finding out the type of people that are getting access to it.
I met 2 of them. And look, these are great gentlemen. They're great. If they weren't, they wouldn't be both.
President Trump, do you remain confident in Hegseth? Do you remain confident in Pete Hegseth?
Oh, total.
President Trump,
Why do you even ask a question like that? We have recruitments that's at an all-time high. The spirit in the armed forces is fantastic. No, great confidence.
President Trump, you share your message of Defense Secretary Hegseth using Signal to discuss those military plans.
Are you bringing up Signal again? I thought they gave that up 2 weeks ago.
There was a new report this weekend that he used it in a separate chat that included some family members.
It's all just the same old stuff from the media. That's an old one. Try finding something new.
Sir, your message to Catholics.
That's it. We could find 3, 4, 5, 6. We could find Signal chats of Pete Hegseth texting his son's schoolmates. Oh, yes, you guys like Bakugan? Well, do you guys also happen to like classified information? Yeah, it's Signal. It's an old story. It's an old story. Sometimes you find the smoke and you only realize how bad it is until you see the wreckage caused by the fire.
Sir, mourning the loss of Pope Francis, your message to Catholics, sir.
We love you all. We're with you all. They were with me during the election, as you know, very strongly, and it's just an honor to have the support of the Catholics, and I feel very badly for them because they love the Pope.
No matter who the next Pope.
My gosh. And that's really it. It's just, let's move on. Let's move on. Oh, another Signal chat? Doesn't matter. Remember this, 100% OPSEC is what Pete Hegseth said. We had 100% OPSEC. 100% OPSEC. 2 separate leaks from 2 separate Signal chats leaking the same information. The guy who said we were 100% OPSEC in those chats was the same guy giving that information to his wife. And this is who we're going to keep in this position? Well, maybe not necessarily. Trump might talk a big gang about standing by Pete Hegseth, but NPR is reporting that the White House is actually looking to replace him as defense secretary. This is an NPR exclusive. The White House has begun the process of looking for a new leader at the Pentagon to replace Pete Hegseth, according to a U.S. official who is not authorized to speak publicly. This comes as Hegseth is again mired in controversy over sharing military operation details in a group chat. The defense secretary is under fire after revelations that he shared classified information in a group chat with his wife, brother-in-laws, according to officials. We've already talked about all this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what matters here is the idea that they're looking at somebody else. Now, whether or not this is true, I can't say for sure. This is one anonymous source talking to NPR. Now, I like NPR, okay? I've donated to NPR before. Give me one of the little liberal tote bags, and so to speak. So I don't think that they would publish this if it had zero credibility. This isn't like a rag publication. But it's also still an anonymous source, and I don't know who it is. And we also don't know the extent that they're looking into it. It could be, hey, they have already committed that we need to replace Pete Hegseth, that he's a walking disaster, and it's only a few more weeks until he throws himself into another crisis, and by the end of 2025, he's going to be bringing Trump's numbers down digits. So it could be that, or it could be, hey guys, you know, things are pretty rocky right now for Pete Hegseth. I know we're not going to cave, but if we were, just so I know my options, who could we replace him with? Because mind you, there are so many more people who are more qualified than Pete Hegseth. It's not like, okay, guys, it's Pete Hegseth or Lloyd Austin or, you know, that trans military official all the Republicans really didn't like. You can choose whoever you want. I mean, as long as you get him confirmed by the Senate and you have the political capital to do so, but that should not be hard as long as you literally don't pick another Neanderthal. If you don't pick another Neanderthal and you don't pick somebody that's too scandal prone and they have some amount of knowledge from some experience leading, you know, in the military before, organizations larger than just a few hundred people, then I think you can go somewhere. And I think it won't be an issue to confirm them, especially considering how scandal prone this guy is. But still, will they be as loyal? Will they be able to find somebody who's a credible, good at the job, and as loyal as Pete Hegseth? I don't know, especially since Pete Hegseth is vulnerable, and that vulnerability means his loyalty is all that's keeping his job intact, which means it's something that he has to clutch onto with all of his life, where that might not be the case for an honorable, well-decorated, experienced four-star general. Oh, also, I just want to throw out there that I think that this whole administration is going to be intelligence failure after intelligence failure. We started on the emails, but we've far left the email station, okay? I would take the emails back for anything.